Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Art, former black sheep, ex-bad character, retired villain with the evil resting face, and of course the family's designated problem child, who will go down in history in my ex-family as the traitor with the ugliest hair color ever. This is relevant because it brings me to today's topic. Did they teach you to hate your natural look? Did they zero in on a feature of your body and make it their target? Did they make you feel ashamed of your face, of your hair, your weight, the way you dress? It's as if existing in your own skin and expressing who you are is completely wrong. Did they shame you for your physical appearance? A narcissistic parent will weaponize appearance as a weapon of control, and for scapegoats, it can distort our sense of self for years. Narcissists are so shallow, and image is everything. I mean, for a narcissistic parent, the way their children look isn't about the child, it's about them. Of course it is. When is something that you do not a personal attack on your narcissistic parent? Even if it has nothing to do with them, if you make a personal choice, you express yourself because it's who you are, and obviously you exist as a separate person from them. But this is inconceivable to a narcissistic parent. The child's appearance becomes a reflection of the parent's worth and their reputation and their status. So if the scapegoat doesn't look the way the narcissistic parent wants, it will be framed as a personal attack, a personal insult, and an embarrassment to the narcissistic parent. It's all about facade maintenance, The family itself must present as flawless to the outside world so that they can hide the chaos and dysfunction that's happening on the inside. And this means that everyone, including the scapegoat, has to perform, visually or intellectually, or perform in some way to please the narcissistic parent. And I'm going to elaborate my take on this physical performance that we must do for the narcissistic parent, or else we get shamed and abused. But first, I want to share some personal examples of how I experienced this with my abusive birth giver. And then I'm going to give you my take and give you the bigger picture. In my home, my brother, who was the golden child, he was put on a high pedestal for his intellect. So my mother used to always brag about how intelligent he was, how she taught him the alphabet when he was like a baby, and how brilliant and a genius he was. And she really pushed him towards success, absolute success. Me, on the other hand, I remember I was in special classes because I had a hard time reading or doing anything academically, performing academically. And I really struggled in my youngest years. Of course I did. And this reinforced the image in my ex-family that I was defective in some way. But children who grow up with abuse and constant shaming will often struggle, generally more than other kids in school. Not all kids, but many of them. And this is not because they lack intelligence. It's because when you live with somebody who's constantly abusing you emotionally or neglecting you emotionally, or, when you go through all sorts of abuses as a child, this disrupts your ability to focus and to learn. And none of that was relevant at all. No one ever questioned why I was having such problems, because my role in the family was to be pretty and to be my mother's little perfect doll. And the point of focus has always been my physical appearance. My mother's entire focus has always been on my physical appearance, starting with my hair. She had this fantasy that my hair was meant to be bleach blonde. Okay, that was my mother's fantasy. I was to have bleach blonde hair, even though she had dark hair My brother had dark hair. My father had dark hair. So go figure how that became a fantasy of hers. But she had this obsession, this unnatural, insane obsession with blonde hair. When I was a baby, I was born with blonde hair. And as I grew out of my toddler years, my hair naturally darkened. And I was told every single day that my natural hair color was shameful, that I was ugly, that I lost that beauty, that I was losing that spark. My beauty was fading away. I no longer looked like that perfect princess that she wanted me to look. And I mean, narcissists will train you to hate yourself. And I remember trying to explain this to people on how my hair was a trigger point for me, because there was so much trauma around my mother's behavior towards me, because her focus was so obsessive. And regular people just have no idea how such simple thing like hair, or the way you dress, the smallest things that are so trivial to regular people can become such a huge source of trauma for someone who's been through this. My mother used to make all sorts of concoctions for me to dunk my head into every night. And I would have to dip my hair in this bucket, and I had to stay with my hair inside this bucket with things that she would put in there, to try and lighten my hair, through henna and natural herbs, or eventually it was hair dye. My hair had to be blonde. And of course, when I was a child, I believed her, because she kept repeating to me that my natural, the way that I was developing, my natural hair color, it was ugly. And she didn't even let me trim my hair. So when I was in primary school, my hair was really, really, really long, and it was always matted. I always had these mats in the back of my head. And I remember summertime, it was so hot, and it was just, I always had matted set of hair, and I would request to get a trim, and I wasn't allowed to have a trim. That's something that I was forbidden to do, and that was cause for psychological, emotional, physical abuse, silent treatments. If I actually even requested to have a little trendy trim so that I could just be like other girls and have, just normal hair, and one day I took my babysitting money and I walked to the hairdresser that was closest to my house. And that was the first time that it was like an act of rebellion, really. It was the first time that I went to the hairdresser on my own with my babysitting money, and I was like, okay, I want to have short hair. And I didn't know how this worked, and the hairdresser was a terrible hairdresser, and she gave me the ugliest haircut. I had this bob with this fringe, and it was just I looked like a triangle. It looked so terrible. And when I got home, my brother laughed and laughed and laughed at the way I looked. And of course, my mother took this incident to reinforce the idea that if I don't listen to her, and if I don't do what she says, terrible things happen to me, So my mother literally behaved like Rapunzel's evil stepmother. If you guys watched that movie, Tangled, do you guys remember? She would brush her hair and sing about the beautiful hair, but behind that behavior was really this selfish motive, right? And my mother reminds me so much of that character. There's a few Disney characters actually that remind me of my mother, and this is one of them, And actually, here's a question for you: which evil Disney character or movie character does your narcissistic parent remind you of? There's so many to choose from in the movies, And, there came a point in my life where I started to hate my hair so much in teenagehood that I started dyeing it all sorts of colors, red, orange, black, And at one point, in an act of true rebellion, I shaved it off fully and dyed it black. I had this very short pixie cut, and I got my little dragon tattoo, and I showed up at home, and it was that was my act of rebellion, And for so many years, I just would never allow for my hair to actually just exist on its own. This is actually the first time that I allow for my hair to grow. My hair is actually a huge part of my healing. The fact that I'm actually no longer feeling that drive to change it, to dye it different colors, to chop it, to do things to it, but just leaving it, has been a huge part of my healing. But there's more. There was so much more than the hair. My face, my facial expressions, which I wasn't allowed to have any natural facial expressions as I grew up. I had to smile 24 hours a day, and if I didn't do that, it was grounds for assault. I was also supposed to wear lipstick, pink lipstick, pink dresses, pink nail polish, pink everything, right? The image with the bleach blonde hair. I was supposed to be her personal doll. And anyone that actually knew me and who knew my personality knew that this fantasy of hers, like, it did not fit me at all. I was born in the 80s, so I would watch shows like, He-Man and G.I. Joe and like Ultraman, and I was obsessed with martial arts and Bruce Lee, and I loved to climb trees, and I played dodgeball with the boys at recess at school. I failed my mother in every way that you can imagine. My personality was her personal failure, and she reminded me of this every single day. And she did everything in her power to infantilize me for as long as she could, and to keep me in this doll-like state. Appearance is one of the easiest things for a narcissist to micromanage in a child. Clothes, hair, posture, facial expressions, anything goes. For the scapegoat, this becomes a daily trap and a source of constant abuse if they don't do it correctly. Your role is to act out their fantasies, and you're punished if you resist. But you're also still criticized over and over if you try to comply. Like, you'll never reach that point of acceptance no matter what you do. You will always be defective in their eyes. And by controlling how you look, the narcissist will reinforce the message that your body isn't your own. It belongs to them to mold, to shame, and to humiliate at will. Your natural features, your awkward teenage years, your sexuality, your gender identity, whether you're straight or gay or trans, or you're simply different in some way, or you do not conform to the image that they fantasized you should become. All of these things become excuses for the narcissist to project their shame and rage onto you. And a narcissistic parent can't allow you to simply exist, because your existence threatens the illusion of perfection, their imagined idea of perfection. So if you do you become living proof of what they can't control. So they attack you for it over and over and over again until you doubt your own right to exist as you are. So as a family scapegoat, you will face constant criticism, okay? You're ugly, you're too fat, you're too skinny, you're sloppy, you're never good enough, right? You will constantly face comparison. Why can't you look more like this person or that person? Okay, I could tell you guys more stories, but I think I've talked enough about that. I want to move on to the general topic here. They will shame your natural growth. You'll be shamed when you hit puberty. If you have acne, weight changes, like your normal phases will be weaponized. They will police your facial expressions. Like, even neutral facial expressions will be, subject to punishment. Wipe that look off your face, even though there is no look, You could face public humiliation. They will joke about you and the way you look in front of others. And they will force these false images onto you, because in their fantasy world, it makes them look good. When your appearance is constantly criticized or mocked, you will internalize the belief that your body is defective. And this can manifest in so many lifelong struggles. I had anorexia for many years, in my 20s, actually. Like, you couldn't recognize me. If you saw me back then, I was a stick. We can go through like obsessive dieting, compulsive exercise, or we can have like a body dysmorphic disorder. So if you will focus on like the tiniest things about your appearance, and you will obsess about those things as if they were such major, incredible, crazy flaws. And those flaws that you focus on are actually minor or like invisible to others, but to you it will feel so overwhelming and so distressing. And even when others compliment you, you might not even believe them. You might reject the compliments because that inner critic trained by your parent is louder than any outside voice. And even when your face is attacked, right, your resting expression, your natural emotions, you learn that simply showing how you feel is dangerous. So smiling becomes a mask of survival. And then you hide the sadness, you hide the anger, you hide your tiredness. Everything gets pushed deep down. And over time, this leads to emotional numbness, chronic dissociation. You can have, explosive outbursts because you're never allowed for safe expression. You can have hypervigilance, monitoring yourself constantly, which will make you feel like so awkward in social situations and so fearful of being judged, being told how to dress, how to style your hair, and what weight you should be. Everything that they try to control about you, it severs you from your authentic self. You were never given the chance to discover what you like or who you are because your body wasn't treated as yours. Many scapegoats grow up struggling with self-expression, fashion, creativity, or even their sexuality and gender identity because every choice was stolen or shamed out of them. And some will also end up using self-expression so intensely that it can become an obsession. Because the middle ground is so hard to find because your sense of identity is built around survival. The real healing begins when you reclaim your body, your style, and your voice, not to earn approval, okay? Not to earn approval or to protect yourself, but simply because they're yours. That's where authentic expression, free from fear and from this performance that you feel you have to give, it can finally grow. When a parent obsesses over appearances, they're not just controlling what you wear, they're teaching you that your very being is wrong. But the truth is that it was never about you. It never is about you. It's all about their shame and their sickness that they are constantly projecting onto you. And now the work is in reclaiming your body and your self-expression so you can live freely again. You are not put on this earth to fit somebody else's idea of what looks right, okay? You are meant to exist fully as you are, within your own body, with your own expression, the way that you see fit. You're not meant to shrink yourself into a role or a mask just so that you can be tolerated. The mask they force you to wear was never yours to carry in the first place. So little by little you can set it down. And every time that you choose your own style, your own hair, whether you choose to smile or frown, when you walk out that door, really as your authentic self, without feeling to prove anything to anyone, without hiding anything, but just being yourself. This is when you really start to heal. The truth is that appearances fade, and what endures really is the way that you think, the way that you create, the way that you love, the way that you show up in the world. That's the part of you that they can't touch. So let this be a reminder that your body was never the problem. Your existence was never wrong. And your healing is all about living freely again. Not as a mask, not as a role, but as your whole authentic self. True healing really comes when you start looking at yourself with fresh eyes, okay? When you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, I love myself, I trust myself, and you believe yourself. You really believe in it, okay? You were never wrong for being who you are. You were simply forced to carry somebody else's shame, somebody else's issues for your entire life. And now your body and your self-expression can really finally belong to you. So remember, I love myself, I trust myself, and I hope this helped you. I'll see you soon.